The Skies over Portugal. Chapter 1. I am standing on a cliff in Portugal when I finally understand why my grandmother painted the sky. The Atlantic wind cuts across the promontory at Cabo da Roca, carrying salt and the smell of wild rosemary. Below, waves explode against black rocks in bursts of white that vanish into foam. Above, the sky stretches in layers, pewter clouds low and fast, then breaks of pale gold, then higher still a blue so pure it seems impossible, as if God had saved his best color for this westernmost edge of Europe. It is the same sky from her paintings. All of them. I have carried my grandfather's journal for 3 days now, tucked inside my jacket. The leather is soft with age, cracked at the spine. I haven't opened it since Houston. I thought I would read it here, at this place where the continent ends and the sea begins, where Papa said he first understood what it meant to be far from home. But now that I'm here, I find I cannot. Instead I watch the sky change, the way light moves through layers of cloud and mist, and I think about how my grandmother spent the last 20 years of her life trying to capture this, not the place itself, but the feeling of it. The weight of beauty that carries also the weight of loss. A gull cries overhead. The sound is sharp and lonely. I open the journal. The first entry is dated August 3, 1946. Papa's handwriting is neat, controlled, nothing like the shaking scrawl of his later years. Asterisk arrived Lisbon 0600 hours. The city is white and gold in the morning light, climbing up from the Tagus in tears like a wedding cake. Portuguese women in black carrying baskets on their heads. Tile everywhere, blue and white, telling stories I cannot read. Coleman says this place was the door to everywhere during the war. People with no countries, no names, just ghosts passing through. Hard to believe now. Seems like paradise. Asterisk. I close the journal and look at the sky again. It takes me a long time to continue reading. Chapter 2. The first time I saw my grandmother paint, I was 7 years old. It was a Saturday in October, the kind of Texas autumn day when the heat finally breaks and you can breathe again. Mama and I had driven down from Dallas the night before, 4 hours through darkness with the radio playing low. She didn't like to drive in daylight anymore. Said the sun hurt her eyes, but I knew it was something else. She'd been different since Daddy died, quieter, like she was listening for something the rest of us couldn't hear. Papa's house sat at the end of a Calico road outside of Uvalde, a white clapboard ranch with a screened porch and a chicken wire fence that kept exactly nothing in or out. Live oaks made heavy shade in the yard. Inside, the house smelled like coffee and old newspapers and something sweeter I couldn't name, linseed oil, I know now, from grandmother's paints. She was in the back room when we arrived. She was always in the back room. Papa met us at the door, tall and sun-dark even at 65, wearing khakis and a white undershirt. He swept me up like I weighed nothing, his arms still strong from years of ranch work. His face was weathered in that way that makes some old men look mean and others look kind. Papa was the kind sort, with pale blue eyes that crinkled when he smiled. "There's my boy," he said, though I wasn't his boy, not really, I was his daughter's boy. And his daughter was fading a little more each time I saw her. "You get any bigger and I won't be able to lift you." "I'm not that big," I said. "Big enough." He set me down and turned to Mama. His smile dimmed. "Annie, you eating?" I'm fine, Daddy. You're not fine. He took her bag. But you're here. That's something. Mama looked past him toward the back of the house. How is she? Same. Painting. Won't stop for meals half the time. He shook his head. She's got 3 new canvases this week. All the same damn thing. The sky? Always the sky. I followed them inside, my sneakers squeaking on the hardwood. The house was dim and cool, curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. In the kitchen, dishes were stacked in the sink, and a pot of coffee sat on the stove, thick and black as motor oil. Papa poured himself a cup and offered one to Mama. She shook her head. Can I see her? I asked. Papa glanced at Mama. She nodded. Go ahead, he said. But don't startle her. You remember, she can't hear you coming. I walked down the narrow hallway toward the back room. The door was open. Light spilled out, different from the dim amber of the rest of the house. This was clear and white, coming through the big window Papa had installed facing north. Grandmother said north light was best for painting. She'd told me that in sign language, her hands moving in shapes I was only beginning to understand. She sat on a stool in front of an easel, her back to me, wearing a man's shirt spattered with paint. Her hair, steel gray and pinned up, caught the light. Before her, the canvas glowed. Sky. All sky. Layers of blue and white and gold, clouds that seemed to move even though they were only paint and cloth. There was something about the way the light came through them, as if she'd painted not the clouds themselves but the space between them, the air that held everything up. I stepped into the room. She didn't turn. I moved closer, into her peripheral vision. Her hand paused, brush hovering. Then she looked at me and her whole face changed, opened up, like clouds parting. She smiled. Her hands moved, asterisk little bird. You came. Asterisk. She'd called me that since I was small. Passerino. I didn't know why. Asterisk I came, asterisk I signed back, clumsy but earnest. She set down her brush and reached for me. Her hand smelled like turpentine and something earthy, raw umber, maybe, or burnt sienna. She pulled me close and I let her, breathing in paint and soap and the particular scent of her skin, which reminded me of dried flowers. When she released me, she turned back to the painting, studying it with fierce concentration. Then her hands moved again. Asterisk, do you see it? Asterisk. Asterisk, see what? Asterisk. Asterisk, the light. There. Asterisk, she pointed to a place in the canvas where gold broke through gray. Asterisk, that is the light that comes after rain. In Portugal. After the storms. That is what I am trying to remember. Asterisk. I looked at the painting. I was 7. I didn't understand. Asterisk, it's beautiful. Asterisk, I signed. She smiled again, but it was sad this time, and distant. She touched my cheek once, gently, then turned back to her work. I was dismissed. In the kitchen, Mama sat at the table with her head in her hands. Papa stood at the window, looking out at nothing. She remembered me, I said. Mama lifted her head. Her eyes were red. Good, she said. That's good, baby. But I could tell from her voice that it wouldn't always be good, that memory was something that could be taken away, and that my grandmother was already beginning to lose her hold on it, and on us, and on everything except those skies she painted over and over, as if by getting them right she could find her way back to something she'd lost a long time ago. Chapter 3. That night, after supper, venison stew and cornbread that Papa made and Grandmother didn't touch, I asked Papa to tell me a story. We sat on the porch, him in the old rocker and me on the steps. Mama had gone to bed early. Grandmother was still in the back room. Through the window I could see her silhouette against the white light, standing now, stepping back to look at her canvas, then moving forward again. She would paint until midnight, Papa said. She always did. What kind of story? Papa asked. He had a tumbler of whiskey in his hand, ice clinking when he moved. About the war, I said. About Portugal. He was quiet for a moment. A nighthawk called from somewhere in the darkness beyond the fence. The air smelled like dust and cedar. You're too young for war stories. I'm not too young. I'm 7.5. He smiled at that. 7.5. Well, he took a drink. What do you want to know? How you met Grandmother? Your mama never told you? She said you were a pilot. You went to Portugal after the war. You fell in love. That's about the size of it. But how? I insisted. How do you fall in love with someone who doesn't speak English? Papa rocked back in his chair, studying the ice in his glass. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, like he was talking to himself as much as to me. I was 23 years old, he said. I'd been flying combat missions for 2 years. Wildcats off the Yorktown, then Hellcats. I'd seen men burn in their cockpits. Seen planes go into the water and not come up. By the time the war ended, I felt about 100 years old. He paused. I waited. They sent me to the Azores first, Legis Field. Refueling stop for planes heading back to the States. But I had skills they needed, so they kept me on, sent me to Lisbon for liaison work with the Portuguese Air Force. This was late apostrophe 46. Salazar was still running things, keeping everybody at arm's length. Portugal had been neutral during the war, see, but neutral in a complicated way. What's complicated about neutral? Neutral meant they traded with everybody. Sold tungsten to the Germans, let British agents operate out of Lisbon, looked the other way when Jewish refugees came through needing papers. Neutral meant surviving. He took another drink. Anyway, I didn't care about politics. I was just glad to be alive and stationed somewhere nobody was shooting at me. And Grandmother? I met her in the Alfama. Old part of Lisbon, all narrow streets and tile and laundry hanging between buildings. I was walking, just walking, trying to clear my head. I heard singing. He stopped rocking. The ice in his glass had melted. She was on a balcony, hanging laundry, singing this song. I didn't know the words, but it was the saddest, most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. Fado, they call it. Portuguese blues. I stood there in the street like an idiot, just listening. When she finished, she looked down and saw me. He smiled. She didn't look embarrassed. She looked, I don't know, amused, like she'd caught me stealing something. Then what? Then I came back the next day. And the next. I learned enough Portuguese to ask her name, Maria Luz. Mary Light. I learned to say beautiful and please and again. She was deaf, I figured that out fast, but she could read lips in Portuguese and Spanish and a little French. Not English, though. So I learned. You learned Portuguese? Enough to get by. Enough to tell her I loved her. He finished his whiskey. She was 21. An orphan. Her parents had died during the war, some kind of sickness. She lived with an aunt who didn't approve of American sailors. We had to meet in secret, like something out of a damn movie. Why didn't the aunt approve? Papa's face darkened. Lots of reasons. Americans were loud, brash, Protestant. We didn't understand how things worked in Portugal. And there were complications. Things about her family. I didn't know the half of it then. What complications? He looked at me for a long moment. Then he shook his head. That's a story for when you're older. I'm old enough now. You're 7.5, he said, but his voice was gentle. Trust me. Some stories need to wait. Inside, grandmother finally turned off the light. I heard her footsteps, slow and careful, moving toward the bedroom. She would sleep for maybe 4 hours, then wake before dawn and start painting again. That was her rhythm now. Sky after sky after sky. Why does she paint them? I asked. The skies? Papa was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, because she's trying to remember what it felt like before everything changed. Before she left Portugal. Before she knew what she knows now. He stood up, bones creaking. You should get to bed, son. Your mama will want to head out early tomorrow. Can I come back soon? You can come back whenever you want. This is your home too. But as I went inside, I looked back and saw him standing at the porch rail, staring out into the darkness with his empty glass in his hand, and I knew that something in this house was broken, something that had nothing to do with grandmother's deafness or her forgetting, something that went back to Portugal and those narrow streets and that girl on the balcony singing her sad, beautiful songs. I would be 13 before I understood what it was. I would be 17 before I read it in his journal. And I would be 24, standing on a cliff at the edge of Europe, before I finally forgave him for keeping it secret for so long. Chapter 4. Mama died when I was 11. They said it was an aneurysm, one of those things that just happens, a blood vessel in the brain that burst like a balloon. She was driving to work. The car drifted into the oncoming lane on Highway 75 and hit a pickup truck head-on. The driver of the truck walked away with bruises. Mama died before the ambulance arrived. I was at school when it happened. They pulled me out of social studies and took me to the principal's office, where a woman from Child Protective Services was waiting with a box of tissues and a look on her face that told me everything before she said a word. Papa drove up from Uvalde that same day. I didn't have anywhere else to go, no father, no siblings, no relatives besides him and grandmother. He packed up my room in Dallas, loaded everything into his pickup, and brought me south to the white clapboard house at the end of the Calicut Road. You'll stay with us, he said. It wasn't a question. I didn't argue. I didn't cry, either. I felt hollowed out, like something essential had been scooped from my chest and I was just a shell walking around pretending to be a boy. Grandmother knew something had happened, she could read it in our faces, but her mind was already slipping enough that she couldn't hold on to the concept of death. She would ask where Mama was, her hand signing the question with increasing agitation, and Papa would explain, and she would nod and seem to understand. Then an hour later she would ask again. After a week, Papa stopped explaining. He would just shake his head and squeeze her hand, and she would return to her painting. The funeral was small. Some of Mama's co-workers from the insurance office came. A couple of neighbors. The pastor from a church we'd stopped attending years ago said some words about God's mysterious ways. I sat in the front pew between Papa and Grandmother, wearing a suit that didn't fit right, and stared at the closed casket and thought about how Mama had been disappearing even before she died, fading a little more each month, and how maybe that's what happened to people in our family. We didn't die all at once, we just slowly vanished until one day there was nothing left but the shape of us. At the reception, a woman I didn't know approached me. She was old, 70 maybe, with dark eyes and silver hair pulled back in a bun. "You are Annie's boy," she said. She had an accent, thick and unfamiliar. "Yes, ma'am. I knew your mother when she was small. I knew your grandmother too, in the old days. In Lisboa." She pronounced it the Portuguese way, with a soft S. "You look like them. Like your avó. The same eyes." I didn't know what to say to that. She reached into her purse and pulled out a card, cream-colored, expensive-looking. "If you ever want to know about your family," she said, "you call this number. There are things your grandfather will not tell you, but you should know them." She pressed the card into my hand and walked away before I could respond. I looked at the card. There was no name, just a phone number with a Houston area code. Papa appeared at my elbow. "Who was that?" "I don't know. She said she knew grandmother in Lisbon." His face went hard. "What did she tell you?" "Nothing. Just that I should call her if I wanted to know about the family." He took the card from my hand and studied it. For a moment I thought he would tear it up. Instead, he slipped it into his jacket pocket. "You don't need to call anyone," he said. "You want to know about the family, you ask me." "Okay." But I could tell from his voice that there were questions I shouldn't ask, doors I shouldn't open. The same way I knew Mama had been sad about something deeper than Daddy's death. The same way I knew grandmother's paintings weren't just paintings. That night, back at the house, I helped Papa clean up after dinner. Grandmother had already retreated to her room. I could hear her in there, moving canvases, preparing for another night of work. "Papa?" I said. He was at the sink, scrubbing a pot. "Yeah? Why did grandmother leave Portugal?" His hand stopped moving. He stood very still, water running over the pot. "Because she married me," he said finally. "Because America was my home, and she was my wife." "Did she want to leave?" "I don't know." He set down the pot. "I thought she did. I thought we were starting something new. But now..." He trailed off, staring out the window at the darkness. "Now I think maybe she left part of herself behind, and she's been trying to get back to it ever since." He dried his hands and turned to me. His eyes were wet. "Your mama was the same way," he said. "Always looking backward, trying to find something that got lost along the way. I used to think it was just sadness, just grief. But it's deeper than that. It's in the blood. This longing." "For what?" "I wish I knew, son. I wish I knew. He left me there in the kitchen and went to his room. Later, I heard him pour a drink. Then another. The ice clinked in his glass like small, distant bells. I went to the back room. Grandmother was painting, her back to the door. This canvas was different, darker, the sky heavy with storm clouds, but shot through with golden light that seemed almost violent in its intensity. She painted like she was angry, her brush strokes hard and fast. I stood in the doorway and watched her work. After a while, she sensed me there and turned. When she saw my face, something shifted in hers. She set down her brush and came to me, moving carefully, her hands already forming words. Asterisk your mother, asterisk she signed. Asterisk she is gone. Asterisk. I nodded. She pulled me close. She smelled like paint and turpentine and that dried flower scent, and her body was thin and frail, but her grip was strong. She held me for a long time. When she pulled back, she touched my face, then signed, asterisk I'm sorry. I forget so many things. But not you. Never you, Passerino. Asterisk. Asterisk why do you call me that? Asterisk I signed. Asterisk little bird. Why? Asterisk. She looked at me with those dark eyes, so like Mama's, so like mine. Then she turned back to the painting and pointed at the golden light breaking through the storm. Asterisk because you will fly, asterisk she signed. Asterisk you will fly away from here, and you will find what we lost. Asterisk. At 11 years old, I didn't understand what she meant. But I kept those words anyway, carried them like a promise, and when I was 24 and standing on that cliff in Portugal with Papa's journal in my hands, I would finally understand that she'd been trying to tell me the truth all along, that the skies she painted weren't memories at all. They were maps. Chapter 5. I turned 12 in the spring, and Papa taught me to shoot. We went out past the fence line on Saturday mornings, just the two of us, carrying his old Winchester and a box of shells. He set up cans on a fallen log and showed me how to hold the rifle, how to breathe, how to squeeze the trigger instead of pulling it. Shooting is about patience, he said. You rush it, you miss. You have to wait for the moment when everything lines up, your breath, your sight, your body. Then you act. I was a terrible shot at first. The rifle was heavy and the kick startled me. But Papa was patient, adjusting my grip, my stance, my focus. After a few weeks, I started hitting the cans. The sound of metal ringing out across the empty land made something settle in my chest, some part of me that had been jangling loose since Mama died. There you go, Papa said, grinning. You're a natural. I wasn't a natural, but I liked that he said it anyway. Those mornings became our ritual. We'd shoot until the sun got high, then walk back to the house for lunch. Grandmother would have sandwiches waiting, though she often forgot what she'd made or whether she'd already eaten hers. Papa would guide her gently, make sure she ate something, then she'd disappear back into the painting room. She's getting worse, I said one day, after she'd asked me 3 times who I was. Papa was cleaning the Winchester, running an oiled cloth down the barrel. Yeah. Is there medicine? Something that could help? No. He didn't look up from his work. This kind of forgetting, there's no fixing it. It just takes and takes until there's nothing left. That's not fair. No, it's not. He set down the rifle and looked at me. But fear doesn't have much to do with anything, does it? Life just happens to you, and you deal with it best you can. Is that what you did in the war? He was quiet for a moment. The war was different. In the war, you had a mission. You knew what you were supposed to do, even if you didn't know why. You followed orders, you did your job, and if you were lucky, you made it home. He picked up the rifle again. Watching someone you love disappear piece by piece, this is harder. There's no mission. No orders. You're just helpless. That night, I heard him pouring drinks in the kitchen, the familiar sound of whiskey sloshing into a glass. I heard it again an hour later. And again after that. I started keeping track. 3 drinks became 4. 4 became 5. Some nights, he'd sit on the porch until 2 in the morning, smoking cigarettes and staring into the darkness, and I'd wake to the sound of his footsteps unsteady on the floorboards. He never missed our shooting lessons, though. Never slurred his words around me. But I could see it happening, the same slow disappearing that had taken Mama, just in a different form. Chapter 6. School in Uvalde was different from Dallas. Smaller, slower, everyone knowing everyone else's business. I was the orphan boy living with his grandparents, which made me either an object of pity or curiosity, depending on who you asked. I kept my head down, did my work, didn't make friends. At lunch, I sat alone and read adventure novels mostly, stories about boys who went on quests and found treasure and came home heroes. I liked the idea that the world was bigger than this dusty town, that there were places where things happened, where mysteries got solved and wrongs got righted. One day in October, a girl sat down across from me without asking. "You're the one whose grandmother paints," she said. I looked up from my book. She was maybe 13, with dark hair in braids and freckles across her nose. I'd seen her around but didn't know her name. "Yeah," I said. "My mom knows her. Says she used to be something, back in Portugal, before she came here." "Something like what?" "I don't know. Something important." She unwrapped a sandwich. "Mom says your grandmother's paintings are worth money. Says galleries in San Antonio would buy them if your grandfather would sell." "He won't sell." "Why not?" "Because they're hers." The girl studied me. "You're protective." "She's my grandmother." "She's dying though, right? I heard she doesn't even know who people are anymore." I closed my book. "Who are you?" "Teresa Ruiz." She took a bite of her sandwich. "My mom's Portuguese. From the Azores. She knew your grandparents in Lisbon, back in the day." I remembered the woman at Mama's funeral. The card Papa had taken from me. "Your mom gave me her number," I said. "At my mother's funeral." Teresa nodded. "She wanted to talk to you. But your grandfather wouldn't let her, would he? He said I should ask him if I had questions." "And have you asked him?" "I hadn't. Not the real questions, anyway. Not the ones about why grandmother left Portugal, or what Papa meant by complications, or why he drank himself unconscious most nights while his wife painted the same sky over and over." "No," I admitted. Teresa finished her sandwich, crumpled the wrapper, and stood up. "My mom's home most afternoons. If you want to come by." She wrote an address on a napkin and slid it across the table. She says you should know your history. Says it's not right, keeping secrets from family. She walked away before I could respond. I looked at the napkin. The address was on the other side of town, near the old mission. I folded it and put it in my pocket, though I wasn't sure I'd ever use it. That afternoon, Grandmother had another bad episode. I came home from school to find Papa in the kitchen, his face pale, holding a dish towel stained with blood. What happened? I dropped my backpack. She cut herself. Broke a glass, tried to pick up the pieces. He pressed the towel against his hand. I realized the blood was his, not hers. She didn't understand why I was stopping her. Started signing that she needed to clean it, that her aunt would be angry if the house was messy. Her aunt's been dead for 30 years. I know that. You know that. She doesn't know that. He went to the sink and ran cold water over his hand. The cut was deep, across his palm. I had to grab her wrists to stop her. She looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was hurting her. Papa, she's scared all the time now, he said quietly. Living in a world where nothing makes sense, where faces don't match names, where time jumps around. She's terrified, and there's nothing I can do about it. Maybe we should find someone to help. A nurse or... With what money? He wrapped his hand in a clean towel. I'm barely keeping us afloat as it is. The ranch doesn't turn profit like it used to. Your mom's life insurance helps, but that won't last forever. I hadn't known things were that bad. Papa never talked about money. Where is she now? I asked. Painting. Where else? I went to the back room. Grandmother stood in front of her easel, brush in hand, but she wasn't painting. She was just staring at the canvas, her face blank. The painting was wrong. All her other skies had been beautiful, turbulent sometimes, sad sometimes, but always beautiful. This one was just gray. Flat, lifeless gray, like concrete or ash. No light breaking through. No gold. No hope. I touched her shoulder gently, letting her know I was there. She turned. Her eyes were wet. Asterisk I can't see it. Asterisk she signed. Asterisk I can't see the sky anymore. Asterisk. Asterisk it's okay. Asterisk I signed back. Asterisk it'll come back. Asterisk. But she shook her head. Asterisk no, it's gone. I looked for it all day. I tried to remember. But it's gone. Asterisk. She sat down on her stool, still holding the brush, and started to cry, silent, heaving sobs that shook her whole body. I didn't know what to do. I'd never seen her cry before. She'd always been so steady, so focused on her work, even as her mind unraveled. I put my arms around her and held on. After a while, Papa came in. He saw us and his face crumpled. He knelt down beside the stool and gathered Grandmother into his arms, and the three of us stayed there in the white north light while the shadows grew long and the unfinished gray sky on the canvas stared back at us like an accusation. That night, after Papa had given Grandmother her pills and put her to bed, I took out the napkin Teresa had given me. I looked at it for a long time. Then I folded it and put it in my desk drawer, under my books where Papa wouldn't find it. I wasn't ready yet, but I would be. Chapter 7. Winter came hard that year. Cold fronts swept down from the plains, bringing ice and wind that rattled the windows and made the live oaks creak. Papa kept the house warm with the old wood stove, feeding it logs and mesquite, but grandmother was always cold. She wore sweaters layered over sweaters and still shivered. She didn't paint anymore. The canvases sat in the back room, stacked against the walls, dozens of skies in all their moods and iterations, and that final gray one still on the easel, unfinished, a monument to forgetting. Instead, she wandered. Through the house, through the yard, sometimes down the Calicut road toward town until Papa or I noticed and brought her back. She was looking for something, you could tell, but she couldn't remember what. She'd open drawers, closets, cabinets, searching with increasing agitation, then forget why she was searching and move on to the next room. "We can't watch her every minute," Papa said one night. He looked exhausted, his face gaunt, dark circles under his eyes. "She's going to walk off one of these times and we won't find her. So what do we do?" He took a drink of whiskey. "I called a place in San Antonio. Memory care facility. They have space. You want to put her in a home?" "I don't want to do anything. But I can't keep her safe here. And you've got school. You can't be her babysitter." "I don't mind." "You should mind." He set down his glass. "You're 12 years old. You should be playing baseball or getting in trouble or doing whatever the hell kids do, not watching your grandmother disappear. Maybe she'd get better if she stayed here, in her own house." "She's not going to get better." His voice was sharp. "This isn't something you get better from. It just gets worse until there's nothing left but a body, and then even that gives out." I didn't say anything. Papa rubbed his face. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't." He stopped. "I'm trying, kid. I'm trying to do right by both of you. But I don't know what right looks like anymore." He poured another drink. I went to my room and closed the door. Through the walls, I could hear grandmother moving around, her footsteps slow and aimless. I heard Papa get up and guide her back to bed. I heard him talking to her softly, though she couldn't hear him. Maybe he just needed to say the words out loud. Maybe he was trying to convince himself of something. I took out the napkin with Teresa's address. Chapter 8. I went to see Mrs. Ruiz on a Saturday in January. Papa had driven to Uvalde for supplies, and grandmother was having a good day, lucid enough to sit in the front room with a blanket over her lap, looking out the window at the winter bare trees. I told her I was going for a walk. She nodded and touched my hand, and I slipped out. The address was on the far side of town, a small adobe house with a neat yard and a statue of the Virgin Mary near the door. I knocked, not sure what I was going to say. Mrs. Ruiz answered. She was smaller than I remembered, and older, but her eyes were sharp. "I thought you might come," she said. "Teresa said you talked." "Yes, ma'am." "Come in." The house smelled like cinnamon and coffee. She led me to a small living room crowded with furniture and photographs. On one wall hung a painting, a sky, luminous and gold. I stopped. "That's one of my grandmother's." "Yes. She gave it to me, many years ago. Before she stopped speaking Portuguese, before the sickness took her mind." Mrs. Ruiz sat down and gestured for me to sit. "You want to know about your family?" "Papa won't talk about it." "No, he wouldn't." She poured coffee from a pot on the table, offered me a cup. I took it even though I didn't like coffee. Your grandfather is a good man, but he carries guilt. Guilt makes people silent. Guilt about what? She studied me. How much has he told you? About the war? About Lisbon? He said he was stationed there after the war. He met my grandmother. They fell in love. That's true. But it's not the whole truth. She sipped her coffee. Portugal during the war was complicated. Salazar, our dictator, he kept us neutral, but neutral meant doing business with everyone. The Nazis bought tungsten from us. The British used Lisbon as a spy hub. And refugees came through by the thousands, Jews fleeing Europe, looking for ships to America or Brazil or anywhere that would take them. I knew some of this from history class, but hearing it from her was different. Your grandmother's family, Mrs. Ruiz continued, they helped these refugees. Quietly. Dangerously. They forged papers, hid people, got them onto ships. It was illegal. If Salazar's secret police, the PIDE, caught you, you disappeared. Grandmother did this. Her parents did. Her uncle. Your grandmother was young, but she helped. She was brave, that one. Smart. And deaf, which meant the PIDE underestimated her. They didn't think a deaf girl could be part of anything important. My coffee was getting cold. I set it down. What happened to her family? Mrs. Ruiz's face darkened. They were betrayed. Someone informed on them, we never knew who. In 1943, the PIDE raided their house. They arrested her parents, her uncle. Maria Luz, your grandmother, was 17. She wasn't home that night. When she came back, the house was empty. She never saw her family again. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. They killed them. The PIDE didn't kill people publicly. They just made them disappear. Prisons, work camps, torture. Your grandmother's parents died in custody. The official report said illness, but we knew better. And grandmother? She survived because she was smart and because people protected her. An ant took her in, not a blood ant, but someone from the underground network. She kept her head down, stopped helping refugees. But she never forgot. She painted to remember them, the people her family saved. The skies, those were the skies of hope, of freedom. The sky you see when you finally escape. I thought about all those paintings stacked in the back room. All those skies. Did Papa know? I asked. When he met her. Mrs. Ruiz hesitated. Some of it. Not all. Your grandmother didn't talk about the past much. It was too painful. And your grandfather, he had his own ghosts. What do you mean? She stood up and went to a cabinet, pulled out a folder. There are things Teresa found. Old records, letters. Things about what the Americans were really doing in Lisbon in 1946. She handed me the folder. Inside were photocopies of documents, military reports, cables, lists of names. I couldn't make sense of most of it, but certain phrases jumped out: intelligence operation, extraction, covert support, refugee network. Your grandfather wasn't just a pilot doing liaison work, Mrs. Ruiz said. He was part of an American intelligence operation, helping the refugee networks, gathering information about Portuguese fascist sympathizers. Dangerous work. The kind that got people killed if they were caught. I looked at the document, my head spinning. He met your grandmother through this work, she continued. She was part of the network he was supporting. They fell in love, yes. But it wasn't simple. It wasn't just two young people meeting by chance. They were both part of something bigger, something dangerous. Why didn't he tell me? Because he made choices. Choices that saved some people and cost others. She took the folder back. There's more to the story. Things even I don't know. But you deserve to understand that your family's history isn't just sadness and painting. It's courage. It's sacrifice. It's secrets that powerful people wanted buried. I sat there, trying to absorb it all. Your grandmother's paintings, Mrs. Ruiz said softly, they're not just beautiful. They're a record. A testimony. She painted what she couldn't say out loud, the memory of people who fought for something good in a dark time, and paid for it with everything they had. I thought about the gray painting, the one where grandmother couldn't find the sky anymore. She's forgetting it all now, I said. I know. Teresa told me. Mrs. Ruiz's eyes were sad. That's why you needed to hear this. Someone has to remember. Someone has to carry the story forward. She walked me to the door. Before I left, she pressed something into my hand, a small photograph, black and white, creased with age. This is your grandmother, she said. In Lisbon, 1944. Before everything fell apart. I looked at the photo. A young woman in a dark dress, standing on a balcony, clothed in sunlight. She was looking at the camera with an expression I'd never seen on grandmother's face, fierce, defiant, alive. Behind her, the sky was brilliant and endless. Keep it, Mrs. Ruiz said. Remember her like this. I walked home in the cold, my mind reeling. The photograph tucked safely in my jacket pocket. When I got back, Papa was in the kitchen making dinner. He looked up when I came in. Where'd you go? Just walking. He studied me for a moment, then nodded and went back to chopping onions. I wanted to ask him about the intelligence work, about the refugees, about why grandmother's family had been killed and whether he'd known. I wanted to ask if he was the reason she'd left Portugal, or if she'd left because there was nothing left to stay for. But I didn't ask. Not yet. Instead, I went to check on grandmother. She was still in the front room, still looking out the window. When she saw me, she smiled and signed. Passerino. You came back. Asterisk. I always come back. I signed. She reached for me and I sat beside her. She took my hand in both of hers, her skin paper thin and cool. We sat like that for a long time, watching the winter light fade, neither of us saying anything. Just being together in the quiet house at the end of the Calicut Road while the past pressed against the present like water against a dam, waiting for the moment when everything would finally break. Chapter 9. Spring came late that year, the mesquite blooming pale yellow against a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Papa's cattle moved slow through the brown grass, and the windmill by the stock tank creaked in the constant wind. Grandmother went into the memory care facility in March. Papa had put it off as long as he could, but after she wandered off one night and we found her 3 miles down the highway in her nightgown, shivering and confused, he finally made the call. The place was in San Antonio. A low brick building with cheerful murals on the walls and nurses who spoke in gentle, patient voices that made my skin crawl. It's for the best, Papa said, though he wouldn't look at me when he said it. We visited every Sunday. The drive took 90 minutes. Papa would bring her flowers, bluebonnets when they were in season, whatever else he could find when they weren't. Grandmother would smile when she saw us, but I could never tell if she knew who we were. Sometimes she called Papa by his name, John, and sometimes she called him Pai, which was Portuguese for father. Sometimes she just stared at us like we were strangers who happened to be kind. The facility had an art room. Grandmother spent most of her time there, but she didn't paint anymore. She'd hold a brush and stare at blank canvas, her hand trembling slightly, then put the brush down and walk away. The staff said it was common. The skills faded along with the memories, leaving only the ghost of desire. She's comfortable, the head nurse told us. That's what matters now. She's not in distress. But I wasn't sure that was true. Sometimes I'd catch grandmother looking out the window with an expression of such profound loss that it made my chest ache. She was searching for something, the sky, maybe, or Portugal, or her parents, or some version of herself that had been buried under decades of forgetting. Papa took it hard. He'd sit with her for hours, holding her hand, telling her stories she couldn't hear and probably wouldn't understand even if she could. On the drive home he'd be silent, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, and I knew he'd spend that night on the porch with his whiskey, smoking cigarettes and staring into the darkness. I turned 13 in April. Papa forgot my birthday. I didn't remind him. Chapter 10. School ended and summer began, long and hot and empty. I spent most of my time at the ranch, helping Papa with chores, fixing fence lines, moving cattle. The work was hard and mindless, which I liked. It kept me from thinking too much. Teresa Ruiz came by sometimes. Her mother had given her permission to ride her bike out to our place, and she'd show up in the late afternoon, dusty and sweating, and we'd sit on the porch drinking sweet tea and talking about nothing important. One day in July, she brought a book, a memoir by a Jewish woman who'd escaped through Lisbon in 1941. "Mom thought you should read it," she said, handing it to me. I looked at the cover. There was a photograph of a crowded dock, people with suitcases, a ship in the background. Why? Because your grandmother's family helped people like this. Because it matters. She took a drink of tea. Mom says history isn't just something that happened. It's something people made happen. People who chose to be brave when it was easier to be afraid. I set the book down. Did your mom know my grandmother? Before? In Lisbon, yeah. They weren't close, but they knew each other through the network. Mom was just a kid then, but she remembers. She said your grandmother was beautiful and fierce, and everyone was a little afraid of her. Afraid. Because she didn't care about consequences. When you're deaf in a dictatorship, people assume you're weak, helpless. Your grandmother used that. She'd carry messages, hide things in her clothes, go places no one would suspect. She was 15, 16 years old, doing things that could get her killed. I thought about the photograph Mrs. Ruiz had given me, that fierce expression, that defiant stance. And then her family was arrested, I said. Teresa nodded. Mom says it broke something in her. After that, she was different. Quieter. Still helped where she could, but the fire was gone. Like she was just going through the motions, waiting for something. For Papa, Maybe. Or maybe just for a reason to leave. She picked at the label on her tea bottle. Mom says Portugal after the war was complicated. The dictatorship was still in power, but things were changing. The Americans and British were around more, pushing Salazar to be more democratic. But the pride was still everywhere. People who'd resisted during the war were still being watched, still in danger. So grandmother left. She married an American and got out. Smart move, really. But I don't think she ever stopped missing it. Portugal, I mean. The way it was before everything went bad. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the cattle low in the distance. "How's your grandfather?" Teresa asked. "Drunk most nights. Sad all the time. Mom says he loved her more than anything. Says watching her forget him is probably the worst thing that could happen to a man like that." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. After Teresa left, I opened the book she'd brought. I read about packed trains and forged papers and desperate people crowding the docks in Lisbon, waiting for ships that might never come. I read about Portuguese families who risked everything to help strangers, about bribes and smuggling and narrow escapes. I read about people who died and people who survived and people who were never heard from again. And I understood, finally, why grandmother painted those skies. They weren't memories of beauty. They were memories of hope, the hope that kept those refugees alive, kept them moving forward even when everything was dark. The sky over Lisbon was the last thing they saw before boarding the ships, the last piece of home before they sailed toward uncertainty. Grandmother had painted hope over and over, trying to remember what it felt like to believe in something that much. And now she couldn't remember at all. Chapter 11. Papa started having bad nights. I'd wake to the sound of him shouting, his voice ragged and afraid. He'd be on the porch, sometimes standing, sometimes sitting with his head in his hands, muttering things I couldn't quite hear. Words in Portuguese, mixed with English. Names I didn't recognize. One night in August, I found him crying. He was sitting on the porch steps, no whiskey this time, just him and the darkness and whatever was eating him from the inside. When he heard me, he tried to wipe his face, but it was too late. "Sorry," he said. "Didn't mean to wake you." "It's okay." I sat down beside him. "Bad dream?" "Not a dream. Memory." He was quiet for a moment. "You ever do something you can't take back? Something that seemed right at the time, but later you realize it cost more than you knew?" "I don't know." "You will. Everyone does, sooner or later." He looked at me. "I made choices in Portugal. Choices that saved some people and damned others. I thought I was doing good. I thought I was on the right side. But the thing about war, about espionage, about all of it, there are no clean choices. Just degrees of harm." "What did you do?" He shook his head. "I can't tell you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I want you to know that your grandmother, she paid for my choices. Not with her life, thank God, but with everything else. Her country, her language, her family. She gave it all up to be with me, and I let her, and I've spent 30 years trying to convince myself it was worth it. She loved you." "She did. I know she did. But love doesn't erase cost." He stood up, his movement stiff and tired. "Go back to bed, kid. And if you ever have to choose between doing what's right and doing what's easy, choose right. even if it costs you everything. Because the easy choice will eat you alive. He went inside, leaving me on the porch with the night and the wind and the distant sound of cattle. I didn't go back to bed. I sat there until the sky started to lighten, thinking about grandmother's fierce young face in that photograph, about Papa's guilt, about choices and cost and the way the past never really lets you go. Chapter 12. The call came on a Tuesday in September. I was in school, sitting through algebra, when the principal pulled me out of class. Papa was in the office, his face gray. "It's your grandmother," he said. "We need to go." We drove to San Antonio in silence. Papa's hands were tight on the wheel, his jaw clenched. I wanted to ask if she was dead, but I was afraid of the answer. She wasn't dead. Not yet. The nurse met us at the door, her face professionally sympathetic. "She had a stroke this morning. We called the ambulance immediately, but she trailed off. She's comfortable. You can sit with her." They'd moved her to a private room. She lay in the hospital bed, so small under the white sheets, tubes and monitors surrounding her. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing was shallow and labored. Papa took her hand and sat down. "Maria," he said, though she couldn't hear him. "Maria, I'm here." I stood by the window, not sure what to do, where to look. "Come here," Papa said. I moved to the other side of the bed. Grandmother's face was peaceful, almost young. The tension she'd carried for years was gone. "She can't hear us," I said. "I know." He stroked her hand gently. "But I need to say it anyway." We sat with her for hours. Nurses came and went, checking monitors, adjusting things. The doctor came and talked about options, but there weren't really any options. Her brain was damaged beyond repair. It was just a matter of time. As the sun was setting, Papa started talking. He talked about meeting her in Lisbon, the way she sang from that balcony, the way she looked at him like he was both foolish and wonderful. He talked about learning Portuguese, about meeting in secret, about asking her to marry him in broken words that made her laugh. He talked about bringing her to Texas, about how scared she'd been on the plane, how she'd gripped his hand so hard it hurt. He talked about their daughter, my mother, being born, how grandmother had painted for the first time after Annie arrived, as if the baby had unlocked something in her. He talked about happy years, quiet years, years when they were just a family and the past seemed far away. Then his voice changed. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry you had to live with it. I'm sorry I brought you here and made you leave everything behind. I'm sorry I couldn't save them all. I'm sorry, Maria. I'm so sorry." His voice broke. He put his head down on the edge of the bed and sobbed, his shoulders shaking, all the years of guilt and grief pouring out of him. I didn't know what to do, so I just put my hand on his back and held it there. Grandmother died an hour later, just as the last light faded from the sky. The monitor went flat. The nurse came in. She checked for a pulse, then turned off the machines, and the silence that followed was absolute. Papa sat there holding her hand for a long time. Finally, he stood up. He kissed her forehead, smoothed her hair back, and said something in Portuguese I didn't understand. Then he turned to me. His eyes were red and empty. "Let's go home," he said. Chapter 13. The funeral was on Friday. More people came than I expected, neighbors from Uvalde, some of Papa's friends from the VFW, a few artists from San Antonio who'd seen grandmother's work in a gallery show years ago. Mrs. Ruiz came with Teresa. A man I didn't recognize stood in the back, older, wearing an expensive suit that looked out of place in our small church. We buried her in the cemetery on the hill overlooking the valley. Papa had bought the plot years ago, next to a space for himself. The marker was simple, Maria Luz Silva, 1925 to 1989. Beloved wife and mother. It didn't say anything about Portugal, about what she'd survived, about the people she'd helped or the family she'd lost. Just those basic facts, as if a life could be summarized in 2 lines. After the service, the man in the expensive suit approached us. "Mr. Silva," he said, extending his hand to Papa. "I'm very sorry for your loss." Papa stared at him for a moment, then shook his hand reluctantly. "Do I know you?" "We met once, long ago. Lisbon, 1947. The man's English had a faint accent. "I wanted to pay my respects. Your wife was a remarkable woman." "Yes, she was. She saved my family. Did you know that? My parents, my sister, we got out on false papers her family provided. We made it to Brazil, then America. My father built a business. I went to university. Everything I am, I owe to people like your wife." Papa's face was unreadable. "I'm glad you made it." There were others who weren't so fortunate. The man's voice dropped. Others who should have made it, but didn't, because of choices that were made. Papa's jaw tightened. "I did what I could." "I'm sure you did." The man pulled a card from his pocket and handed it to Papa. "If you ever want to talk about those days, about what really happened, I'd be interested to hear your side. There are people who still have questions, who deserve answers." Papa took the card but didn't look at it. "There's nothing to talk about?" "Perhaps not. But the offer stands." The man nodded to me. "You have a fine grandson. I hope he grows up knowing the truth about his family." He walked away before either of us could respond. I looked at Papa. Who was he? Someone from the old days. Papa crumpled the card and put it in his pocket. Nobody that matters now. But I could see from his face that it did matter, that the man had said something that cut deep. The rest of the mourners offered their condolences and left. Soon it was just Papa and me standing by the grave, looking at the fresh earth and the flowers people had brought. The sky was cloudy, threatening rain. "She would have hated this," Papa said finally. "All these people, all this fuss. She just wanted to paint. She was good at it. She was brilliant at it. Could have been famous if she'd wanted. But she painted for herself, not for anyone else." He looked at me. "That's a kind of courage, you know. Doing something purely because it matters to you, not because anyone else will see it or understand it." We stood there a while longer, then drove home. That night, Papa drank more than usual. I heard him on the porch, heard the clink of bottle against glass, heard him talking to himself, or maybe to grandmother, wherever she was now. I heard him cry. I heard him curse. I heard him say "I'm sorry" over and over until the words lost meaning. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and wondered what secret was so terrible that it had poisoned my grandfather's life for 40 years. I wouldn't have to wonder much longer. Chapter 14. Papa lasted 6 months without her. He tried to keep going, maintained the ranch, cooked meals, made sure I got to school, but something essential had broken in him. He moved through the days like a ghost, present but not really there. The drinking got worse. Some mornings he didn't get out of bed until noon. In December, he sold most of the cattle. Said he was too old to manage them properly, that it was time to downsize. I knew it was more than that. He was preparing for something. Christmas was bleak. We didn't decorate. We didn't cook a big meal. We just sat in the front room and watched TV and tried not to think about the empty chair where grandmother used to sit. On New Year's Day, Papa asked me to help him clean out the back room. I want to do something with her paintings, he said. Can't just leave them stacked against the wall. We spent the afternoon sorting through them, dozens of canvases, all those Portuguese skies in their infinite variations. Morning light, afternoon light, storms and clear days, gold and gray and every shade in between. Looking at them all together was overwhelming, like seeing inside her mind, seeing what she'd held on to all those years. What will you do with them? I asked. Donate most of them. To museums, galleries, places that will take care of them. He paused at one canvas, a particularly luminous sky, gold breaking through dark clouds. This one's for you. Papa, take it. When you're older, when you have your own place, hang it somewhere you'll see it every day. Remember her. Remember that she survived something terrible and still found beauty worth painting. I took the painting carefully. It was lighter than I expected. At the bottom of the stack, we found the gray one, the unfinished painting from the day grandmother couldn't see the sky anymore. Papa stared at it for a long time. She knew, he said quietly. Near the end, I think she knew what was happening to her. That's what this is. This is what it looks like inside, when everything you are is just dissolving. He carried it to the wood stove. Papa, don't. It's not a painting. It's a wound. He opened the stove door. Some things shouldn't be preserved. He fed the canvas to the fire. We watched it burn, gray paint bubbling and blackening, the stretcher bars catching and flaring bright. In minutes, there was nothing left but ash. Papa closed the stove door and sat down heavily. I should tell you something, he said. Okay. He looked at me, and I saw something in his face I'd never seen before, fear, maybe, or resignation. I'm sick. Have been for a while. Cancer. Started in my lungs, spread to my liver. The words didn't make sense at first. What? Saw the doctor in November. He said 6 months, maybe less. I didn't tell you because, he shook his head. Hell, I don't know why I didn't tell you. Didn't want you to worry, I guess. Didn't want to admit it was real. There's treatment. Chemotherapy, surgery. At my age, with how far it's spread, I'd just be buying pain. He leaned back in his chair. I'm 69 years old. I've lived a full life. I'm tired. And your grandmother's waiting for me. I can feel it. Don't talk like that. I'm not giving up, kid. I'm just being realistic. He reached over and squeezed my shoulder. I've made arrangements. Mrs. Ruiz and her husband, they've agreed to take you in when the time comes. Good people. They'll make sure you finish school, get on your feet. I don't want to live with the Ruizes. I want to stay here. Can't do that. You're 13. You need adults, structure, family. You're my family. I know, but I won't be here much longer. His voice was gentle but firm. This is how it has to be. We sat in silence while the fire crackled and the winter afternoon faded. All around us, grandmother's skies watched from their canvases, luminous and beautiful and utterly indifferent to our grief. That night, Papa went to his room and came out carrying a wooden box, small and old, with brass hinges. "This is for you," he said. "But don't open it yet. Wait until I'm gone. Wait until you're old enough to understand what it means." What is it? The truth. Or my version of it, anyway. He set the box in my hands. It was heavier than it looked. Letters, photographs, my journal from those years in Portugal. Everything I couldn't say out loud. Everything your grandmother never knew I wrote down. "Papa, promise me. Promise you won't open it until after." I looked at his face, at the exhaustion and pain and something else, relief, maybe, at finally putting down a burden he'd carried too long. "I promise." "Good." He patted my shoulder. "You're a good kid. You're going to be okay. Better than okay. You're going to do something with your life, something that matters. I can feel it." He went back to his room. I heard him lie down, heard the bed springs creak. I sat in the front room holding the box, feeling its weight, wondering what secrets it contained that were so terrible they'd broken a strong man and driven my grandmother to paint the same sky for 20 years. I kept my promise. I didn't open the box that night, or the next week, or even the next month. But Papa was right about one thing: I didn't have to wait long. Chapter 15. Papa died in March, just as the bluebonnets were starting to bloom. He'd held on longer than the doctor predicted, 8 months instead of 6. The cancer ate him slowly, carving him down to bone and will. By the end, he was so thin I could see every rib when I helped him to the bathroom. His skin was yellow. His breath rattled. But his mind stayed sharp. That was almost worse, being aware of every indignity, every loss, every moment of the slow dissolution. The last good day was a Tuesday. He was lucid, sitting up in bed, looking out the window at the live oaks and the pasture beyond. I brought him water and he sipped it carefully. "You know what I miss most," he said. "Flying. That feeling when you pull back on the stick and the ground just falls away. Nothing but you and the sky and the engine. Pure freedom. You were a good pilot." I was a competent pilot. But I was a better spy. He smiled, but it was sad. Funny how the things we're good at aren't always the things we're proud of. "Papa, did you keep the box safe?" "Yes." "Good. You'll read it soon. You'll understand then why I am the way I am. Why your grandmother painted what she painted." He closed his eyes. "Promise me something else." "Anything." "When you read it, don't hate me. I did what I thought was right. I tried to save as many as I could. But the math never works out the way you want it to. Someone always loses. I could never hate you." He opened his eyes and looked at me. "You might, when you know the whole story. But I hope you'll forgive me anyway." "There's nothing to forgive." "Oh, kid." His voice broke. "There's so much." That night, he took a turn. His breathing got worse, more labored. Mrs. Ruiz came and sat with us. She held Papa's hand and spoke to him in Portuguese, soft words I couldn't understand. He seemed to relax when he heard them, like he was being carried back to a place he'd left long ago. Just before dawn, he opened his eyes one last time. "Maria," he said clearly, "I'm coming." Then he was gone. The silence afterward was complete. No more rattling breath, no more struggle. Just stillness. Mrs. Ruiz closed his eyes gently. "He's with her now," she said. "He's home." I sat there beside the bed while the sun rose, washing the room in pale gold light, and I thought about grandmother's paintings, all those skies, and how maybe she'd been painting the place where they would meet again, not Portugal, not Texas, but somewhere in between, somewhere made entirely of light. Chapter 16. I moved in with the Ruizes the week after the funeral. Papa had left the ranch to me, held in trust until I turned 18, but I couldn't live there alone. Mrs. Ruiz had a room ready, small but comfortable, with a window overlooking their garden. She'd put grandmother's painting on the wall, the one Papa had given me. That luminous sky watched over me as I tried to sleep in this strange new bed, in this strange new life. Teresa was kind about the whole thing. She didn't treat me like a charity case or an obligation. She just treated me like I'd always been there, like I was family. "You'll be okay," she said one night when I couldn't sleep and came out to the kitchen. She was doing homework at the table. "I know it doesn't feel like it now, but you will." "How do you know?" "Because you're stronger than you think. Mom says you come from strong people, people who survived things that should have broken them." She tapped her pencil against her textbook. "That's in you too." I wanted to believe her. School became a kind of refuge. I threw myself into my work, into books and essays and math problems that had clear answers. I joined the track team and ran until my lungs burned and my legs shook. I did anything to avoid sitting still, to avoid thinking about the empty ranch house or the box sitting in my desk drawer or the fact that I was 14 years old and completely alone. Mrs. Ruiz tried to help. She cooked my favorite meals, asked about my day, treated me with gentle patience. But she couldn't replace what I'd lost. Nobody could. Months passed. Summer came again, hot and relentless. One evening in July, Teresa found me sitting in the garden, staring at nothing. "You haven't opened it, have you?" she said. "The box your grandfather gave you." I shook my head. "Why not?" "Because once I open it, that's it. That's the last thing he'll ever give me. The last words I'll hear from him." I looked at her. What if I'm not ready? What if I read it and I don't understand? Or worse, what if I understand too well? She sat down beside me. "Mom says he carried a lot of guilt. About the war, about Portugal, about choices he made. She says he was a good man in a bad situation, and that's the hardest kind of man to be." Did she know what he did? Some of it. Not all. The American intelligence operations in Lisbon were secret. Still are, mostly. But she knows he was involved in the refugee networks, that he helped decide who got papers and who didn't. That's a terrible power to have. Deciding who lives and who dies. Essentially. She pulled up a handful of grass, let it sift through her fingers. "Mom says your grandmother knew more than she let on. That she figured out what your grandfather was really doing, but she loved him anyway. Or maybe because of it, because he was trying to save people, even if he couldn't save everyone, including her family. Teresa nodded. Mom thinks that's what broke them, in the end. Your grandmother married the man who was part of the system that couldn't save her parents. That's a complicated thing to live with. We sat there as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. It was beautiful, the kind of sky grandmother would have painted. The kind that made you believe in something better, even when everything else was falling apart. That night, I took out the box. I sat on my bed and held it, running my fingers over the smooth wood, the brass hinges. Inside was the truth, whatever that meant. Inside was Papa's voice, speaking from beyond death, trying to explain the inexplicable. I opened it. Chapter 17. The box contained a leather journal, worn and cracked. A stack of letters tied with string. Photographs, some I recognized, others of people I'd never seen. A military ID card with Papa's photo, but a name that wasn't quite his. A medal in a velvet case, Portuguese, not American. And a single piece of paper, folded carefully, with my name written on the outside in Papa's handwriting. I opened the letter first. Asterisk, dear Passarinho, asterisk. Asterisk, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Good. I've carried this story long enough. It's your turn now. Asterisk. Asterisk, everything I'm about to tell you is true, though some of it is still classified. I'm trusting you to be wise about who you share it with. These aren't just my secrets, they're other people's too, people who are still alive, people who have families and reputations to protect. Asterisk. Asterisk, I met your grandmother in the summer of 1946. That part you know. What you don't know is that I wasn't in Lisbon just for liaison work. I was there as part of an OSS operation, the Office of Strategic Services, what became the CIA. We were gathering intelligence on Portuguese fascist networks, tracking Nazi war criminals passing through Lisbon, and supporting the underground refugee operations. Asterisk. Asterisk, your grandmother's family was one of the networks we worked with. They had connections, safe houses, contacts in the government who could forge documents. They'd saved hundreds of people during the war. We wanted to keep those networks alive in case they were needed again. Asterisk. Asterisk, I met Maria Luz through this work. She wasn't supposed to be involved. Her family tried to keep her out of it after the arrests. But she was determined. She'd lost her parents and she wanted to honor what they'd died for. So she helped. Carried messages, made introductions, used her deafness as camouflage. Asterisk. Asterisk, I fell in love with her immediately. That fierce courage, that refusal to be broken, I'd never met anyone like her. Asterisk. Asterisk, but there was a problem. Asterisk. Asterisk, in early 1947, we learned that the Pied had a mole in one of the refugee networks. Someone was informing, giving up names and safe houses. People were being arrested, disappearing. The whole operation was at risk. Asterisk. Asterisk, we had to find the mole and eliminate them. Asterisk. Asterisk, it took months of careful work, but we narrowed it down to 3 people. One of them was Maria Luz's uncle, her father's brother, the one who'd survived the arrests. He was acting strangely, had too much money, was asking too many questions. Asterisk. But we weren't certain. It could have been one of the other two. We needed proof. My handler gave me an order, used Maria Luz to get close to her uncle, to gather information that could confirm or rule him out. She trusted me. She'd do what I asked. I did it. I lied to her, manipulated her, used her love for me to betray her own family. And we got the proof we needed. Her uncle was the informer. He'd been turned by the Pied after his brother's arrest, threatened with his own death if he didn't cooperate. We eliminated him. Made it look like an accident. The Pied never knew we discovered their source. Maria Luz never knew what I'd done. She thought her uncle had died in a fall. She mourned him, even though he was the reason her parents died. I never told her the truth. I married her, brought her to America, built a life with her, and kept that secret for 40 years. That's what I did. That's the choice I made. I saved dozens of lives by removing that informer. The network survived. People escaped who otherwise would have died. By any reasonable measure, I did the right thing. But I used the woman I love to do it. I betrayed her trust in the worst way possible. And then I let her spend her whole life not knowing. The guilt has eaten me alive. I've spent 40 years drinking to forget, and I never could. Every time I looked at her, I saw what I'd done. Every time she painted those skies, those symbols of hope and freedom, I thought about how I destroyed her family to save strangers. Was it worth it? I don't know. I've asked myself that question 10,000 times and I still don't have an answer. What I do know is this: moral choices are never clean. You do the best you can with the information you have, and you live with the consequences. You try to save as many people as possible, and you accept that you can't save everyone. Your grandmother was extraordinary. She survived horrors, made a life in a foreign land, created beauty in the midst of loss. She deserved better than me. But she chose me anyway, and I loved her the only way I knew how. I hope you can understand. I hope you don't hate me for what I did. And I hope you're brave enough to make the hard choices when your time comes, and wise enough to live with them after. All my love, Papa. I read the letter 3 times. Then I set it down and opened the journal. Chapter 18. The journal was detailed, methodical, written in Papa's precise hand. It documented his time in Lisbon from August 1946 through December 1947, 18 months of intelligence work, refugee operations, and moral compromise. I read about surveillance operations, dead drops, coded messages. I read about Nazi war criminals spotted in Lisbon cafes, about Portuguese police raids, about desperate refugees willing to pay anything for exit papers. I read about meeting grandmother, about learning Portuguese, about falling in love while maintaining operational security. The entries about her were different from the others, softer, more personal, filled with details about her singing, her laugh, The way she looked at him like he was both wonderful and foolish. Then came the entries about the mole. Papa had written them almost clinically, as if by removing emotion he could make the choices more bearable. January 15, 1947, handler confirms Pied has penetrated the network. 3 arrests this week. Need to identify the source. February 3, 1947, 3 suspects. Antonio Silva, Maria Luz's uncle, Fernando Costa, Manuel Suarez. All have access to sensitive information. All show anomalies in behavior. March 12, 1947, handler authorizes use of Maria Luz to gain access to Antonio Silva's home. She trusts me. Will cooperate if I ask correctly. March 18, 1947, told Maria Luz I needed to understand her family history, to meet her surviving relatives before proposing marriage. She was pleased. Took me to her uncle's house. March 20, 1947, found evidence. Antonio has been meeting with Pied contacts, has received payments. He's the informer. Handler wants elimination. March 25, 1947, Antonio Silva eliminated. Staged as accidental fall. Pied investigating but no connection to us. Maria Luz devastated. I comforted her. Feel like a monster. I stopped reading. My hands were shaking. Papa had used grandmother to set up her own uncle. Had comforted her while she grieved, knowing he was responsible for the death she mourned. No wonder he'd carried that guilt. No wonder he'd drunk himself to sleep every night. I kept reading. The rest of the journal documented his final months in Lisbon, marrying grandmother, arranging her exit papers, preparing to return to the States. The entries about their wedding day were heartbreaking in their simplicity. December 8, 1947, married Maria Luz today. Civil ceremony, no family present. She wore a blue dress and carried wildflowers. She looked beautiful. She looked happy. I don't deserve her. The final entry was dated December 20th, 1947. We leave for America tomorrow. Maria Luz is excited, terrified, hopeful. She thinks we're starting a new life together, free from the past. She doesn't know I'm bringing the past with us. She doesn't know I'm the reason she has no family to say goodbye to. I will never tell her. I will spend the rest of my life trying to make this right, trying to be worthy of her love. I will fail, but I will try. God forgive me. That was it. The rest of the journal was blank. I sat on my bed with the pages spread around me, letters, photographs, evidence of a secret life I'd never known Papa had lived, evidence of choices that saved some people and destroyed others. Evidence that the man I loved and trusted had been capable of terrible things in the name of a greater good. I thought about what Papa had said, moral choices are never clean. I thought about grandmother painting those skies, over and over, trying to hold on to something beautiful from a place that had taken everything from her. I thought about Papa drinking himself to death, carrying guilt he could never confess. And I thought about myself, 14 years old, holding secrets that could hurt people, destroy reputations, complicate histories that were already complicated enough. What was I supposed to do with this knowledge? Teresa knocked on my door. "You okay? You've been in there for hours." I gathered up the papers and put them back in the box. "Yeah, I'm okay." But I wasn't okay. Not really. I'd just learned that my family's history was built on betrayal and sacrifice, that love and duty were sometimes the same thing and sometimes opposite, that the people you trusted most could carry secrets dark enough to poison everything they touched. And I'd learned that I was carrying those secrets now, that they were mine to keep or reveal, mine to judge or forgive, mine to live with for whatever time I had left. It was too much weight for a 14-year-old. But Papa was right about one thing: I was strong enough to carry it. I had to be. Chapter 19. I didn't tell anyone what I'd read. Not Teresa, not Mrs. Ruiz, not anyone. The knowledge sat inside me like a stone, heavy and cold. I went to school, did my homework, ran track, pretended everything was normal. But I felt different, older, somehow, like I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. At night, I'd take out the photographs and study them. Papa in his uniform, young and handsome. Grandmother on that balcony, fierce and alive. Pictures of people I didn't recognize, refugees, probably, people Papa had helped save. People who owed him their lives, even if they never knew his name. And one photograph that bothered me more than the others, Papa and another man, both in civilian clothes, standing in front of a Lisbon cafe. The other man had his arm around Papa's shoulder, and they were both smiling. On the back, in Papa's handwriting, * Tom Coleman, Lisboa 1946. A good man. * I remembered Papa mentioning Coleman that first night on the porch, years ago. Coleman says this place was the door to everywhere during the war. Who was Coleman? Another intelligence officer. Someone who'd helped with the operation against grandmother's uncle. Someone who knew the whole story. I went to Mrs. Ruiz. "Do you know anything about a man named Tom Coleman?" I asked. "American, worked with Papa in Lisbon?" Her face changed. "Where did you hear that name?" "Papa's journal. He mentioned him." She was quiet for a moment, then gestured for me to sit down. Tom Coleman was OSS, later CIA. He ran operations in Portugal through the late 40s. Your grandfather worked under him. Is he still alive? I don't know. That whole generation, most of them are gone now. She studied me. Why are you asking? Because I want to understand what happened. The whole story, not just Papa's version. Some stories don't have whole versions. Some stories are just fragments, pieces that different people saw from different angles, and none of it quite adds up to truth. Mrs. Ruiz, I know what your grandfather did. Her voice was gentle but firm. Your grandmother told me, near the end, when her mind was going. She'd figured it out years ago, about her uncle, about why he really died. She was smarter than your grandfather gave her credit for. My breath caught. She knew? She knew, or at least suspected strongly enough that it became truth in her mind. And she forgave him. That's what people don't understand about love. It's not about perfection. It's about seeing someone's worst sins and choosing to stay anyway. Why didn't she tell him she knew? because what good would it have done? He'd spent 30 years punishing himself. She could either add to that punishment or show him mercy. She chose mercy. Mrs. Ruiz leaned forward. That's the lesson in all this, if there is one. Not that your grandfather did something unforgivable, but that your grandmother found a way to forgive it anyway. I thought about all those paintings, all those skies. The paintings, I said slowly. They weren't just about Portugal. They were about forgiveness, about finding light in darkness. Perhaps they were just paintings, and we're all putting too much meaning into them. Sometimes a sky is just a sky. But I didn't believe that. Couldn't believe it. Those skies meant something. They had to. Chapter 20. High school passed in a blur. I studied hard, ran track, worked part-time at the hardware store. I dated a girl named Carmen for 6 months, but it didn't go anywhere. I applied to colleges and got into Utah Austin with a partial scholarship. Throughout it all, I kept the box, kept the journal and the letters and the photographs, kept Papa's secrets like a sacred trust. The ranch sat empty for 4 years, maintained by a property management company but otherwise abandoned. I couldn't bring myself to sell it, couldn't bear the thought of strangers living in the house where grandmother had painted, where Papa had told his stories, where my mother had grown up and I'd learned about loss. The summer before college, I went back. The house was dusty but intact. Someone had boarded up the windows, but I had keys. I let myself in and stood in the front room, breathing in air that smelled like old wood and memory. Everything was as we'd left it. The kitchen table where we'd eaten dinner. The porch where Papa had sat with his whiskey. The back room where grandmother had painted. I went to the back room last. Her easel was still there, dust-covered but standing. Her paints had dried up, the tubes hard and cracked. The north-facing window let in pale light, the same light she'd painted by for 2 decades. I stood there for a long time, trying to imagine her in this space, young and fierce, then older and sadder, then lost and confused, always searching for that perfect sky. On impulse, I went to the shed and found Papa's old woodworking tools. I built a simple frame for the painting he'd given me, the luminous sky, and hung it on the wall where grandmother used to work. It seemed right, having her art in the place where she'd created it. Before I left, I walked the property. The fence lines needed repair. The pasture was overgrown. The cattle were long gone, sold off after Papa's death. But the land itself was unchanged, the same rolling hills, the same live oaks, the same huge Texas sky that went on forever. I understood something then, standing there in the dying light. Grandmother hadn't been painting Portugal's sky. She'd been painting the idea of sky, that vast open space where anything was possible, where freedom meant more than politics or borders, where hope existed not because things were good but because humans needed to believe things could get better. Papa had understood that. That's why he'd done what he did. Not because he was cruel or callous, but because he believed in that hope enough to make terrible choices in service of it. And grandmother had understood it too. That's why she'd forgiven him, why she'd spent her life painting those skies, not as a reminder of what she'd lost, but as a promise of what she'd helped make possible. I locked up the house and drove back to Uvalde as the sun set, painting the Texas sky in shades of gold and crimson. Chapter 21. I graduated from Utah Austin with a degree in history. Went to graduate school. Wrote my thesis on American intelligence operations in neutral Portugal during and after World War II. My advisor said it was some of the best work he'd seen from a student, thorough and empathetic, willing to grapple with moral complexity without passing easy judgment. I didn't tell him I had primary sources no other historian could access. Didn't tell him about Papa's journal sitting in my apartment, or the letters from Tom Coleman I'd found at the National Archives, or the interviews I'd conducted with elderly Portuguese immigrants who remembered those days. I protected Papa's name, protected grandmother's name, used pseudonyms and careful language and strategic omissions to tell the story without revealing the people who'd lived it. But I told the truth. The complicated, messy, impossible truth about people trying to do good in a world that rarely rewarded goodness, about choices made in desperation and lived with in guilt, about love that survived betrayal because it was strong enough to hold contradiction. The thesis was published as a book 2 years later. It did well, not a bestseller, but well enough to get me tenure-track offers at several universities. I took a position at a small college in California, far from Texas, far from Portugal, far from the ghosts that had haunted my family for so long. I was 24 years old. I thought I'd put it all behind me. Then I got a letter from a lawyer in Lisbon. Chapter 22. The letter was formal, written in careful English with a Portuguese letterhead. Dear Mr. Silva, I represent the estate of Dr. Helena Martins, who passed away in January of this year. Dr. Martins was a historian specializing in Portuguese resistance movements during the Salazar regime. In her papers, we found documents and correspondence relating to your grandmother, Maria Luz Silva, and your grandfather, John Michael Silva. Drive. Martins left specific instructions that, upon her death, these materials should be offered to you. She believed you had a right to know the complete history of your family's involvement in the refugee networks of 1940s Lisbon. The materials include letters, photographs, and testimonies from individuals your grandparents helped save, as well as documentation regarding the circumstances of Antonio Silva's death in 1947. If you wish to claim these materials, please contact our office to arrange travel to Lisbon. All expenses will be covered by Dr. Martins's estate. Respectfully, Drive. Paulo Rodrigues Rodrigues and Assasados I read the letter 3 times, my heart pounding. Someone else knew. Someone had documented it all, and now they wanted to give me the truth that Papa had kept hidden, that grandmother had chosen not to speak. I called the number on the letterhead. Dr. Rodrigues answered in Portuguese, then switched to English when I introduced myself. His voice was warm, professional. Mr. Silva, thank you for calling. I was hoping you would. What exactly did Dr. Martins have? A substantial archive. She spent 40 years researching the Portuguese resistance and the refugee networks. Your grandparents' names came up repeatedly in survivor testimonies. She became particularly interested in the case of Antonio Silva and the circumstances surrounding his death. How much does she know? A pause. Everything, I believe. or as close to everything as documentation can provide. She was thorough, and she wants to give this to me. She felt it was important that the families of those involved understand the full context, not just the official records, but the human stories, the choices people made and why they made them. Another pause. She also left a letter for you, to be opened only in person, in Lisbon. My throat was tight. When can I come? Whenever you wish. The materials are being held at my office. I can arrange accommodations, transportation from the airport. Next week, I said. I'll come next week. Excellent. I'll make the arrangements and send you the details. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment staring at nothing, my mind racing. I'd spent 10 years trying to understand my family's history through fragments and silences. Now someone was offering me the complete picture, documented and witnessed and preserved. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt afraid. What if the truth was worse than what Papa had confessed? What if there were other betrayals, other victims, other secrets that would make it impossible to hold on to the love and respect I still felt for him? But I had to know. I'd come too far to turn back now. I booked my flight to Lisbon. Chapter 23. Portugal in spring was exactly as Papa had described it, white and gold and climbing up from the Tagus in tears. Tile everywhere telling stories I still couldn't quite read. I arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, jet-lagged and disoriented. Dr. Rodriguez had arranged for a car to meet me at the airport, a driver who spoke no English but smiled kindly and navigated Lisbon's narrow streets with practiced ease. The city was both foreign and familiar. I'd studied it in books, seen photographs, heard Papa's stories. But being here, smelling the salt air and the grilled sardines and the diesel exhaust, hearing Portuguese all around me, it was overwhelming. The hotel was in the Beixla, one of the rebuilt districts after the 1755 earthquake. My room overlooked a plaza where tourists took photos and local men played cards at outdoor cafes. I stood at the window for a long time, watching the light change, thinking about grandmother seeing this view 70 years ago, thinking about all the refugees who'd passed through this city with nothing but hope and forged papers. That evening, Dr. Rodriguez took me to dinner at a restaurant in the Alfama, the old neighborhood where Papa had first heard grandmother sing. This area hasn't changed much since the 1940s, he said as we climbed the steep, narrow streets. Some rebuilding, of course, but the bones are the same. Your grandmother would recognize it. We ate grilled fish and drank vinho verde, and Dr. Rodriguez told me about Dr. Martins. She was remarkable, he said. Dedicated her life to preserving these stories. She interviewed hundreds of survivors, tracked down documents from sealed archives, pieced together networks that Salazar's government tried to erase. He paused. She was also Jewish. Her family was one of the ones that got out, hidden by Portuguese families, given papers, put on a ship to Brazil. She spent her life repaying that debt. How did she find out about my grandparents? Survivor testimonies, mostly. People remembered a deaf Portuguese girl who helped them, an American pilot who arranged their paperwork. Your grandfather's OSS file was declassified in the 1990s, heavily redacted, but enough information to confirm his role. He refilled my wine glass. She also found records of Antonio Silva's death. The police report said accidental fall, but she discovered inconsistencies. She believed it was an assassination. It was, I said quietly. My grandfather told me before he died. Antonio was an informer. Papa eliminated him to protect the network. Dr. Rodriguez nodded slowly. She suspected as much. The question she could never answer was whether your grandmother knew. She did, or suspected. She figured it out and forgave him. Then she was an extraordinary woman. We finished dinner and walked through the Alfama as the sun set. The narrow streets filled with the sound of fado drifting from open windows, the same sad, beautiful songs grandmother had sung. Tourists clustered around the fado houses, but the real music came from the apartments above, old women singing for themselves, for the ghosts of the past, for anyone who would listen. I stopped at one balcony, listening. My grandfather heard her singing from one of these streets, I said. It changed his life. Fado has that power. It's the sound of saudade, longing for something lost, something that maybe never existed but feels real anyway. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. Very Portuguese. We're a nation of people looking backward. My grandmother never stopped looking backward. No, but she also made something beautiful from that looking. That's the other side of saudade. It's not just grief. It's also creation, transformation. The pain becomes art, becomes meaning. We walked back to my hotel through streets that glowed golden in the evening light. Tomorrow I would go to Dr. Rodriguez's office. Tomorrow I would read what Dr. Martins had found. Tonight, I just wanted to breathe this air, walk these streets, understand why this place had marked my family so deeply. Chapter 24. Dr. Rodriguez's office was in a modern building near the Quai du Sodre, all glass and steel, incongruous among the old tile-fronted buildings. He met me in the lobby and led me to a conference room where several boxes sat on the table. Take your time, he said. I'll be in my office if you need anything. He left me alone with the archive. I opened the first box. Inside were testimonies, typed pages, some in English, most in Portuguese with English translations clipped to them. Stories from people my grandparents had helped save. I read about families hidden in apartments, children given false papers, refugees smuggled onto ships in the dead of night. One testimony was from a woman named Sarah Goldstein. I was 17 when we arrived in Lisbon. My parents, my younger brother, we'd walked across Spain with nothing but what we could carry. We had no papers, no money, no way forward. A Portuguese woman found us sleeping in a doorway. She was young, my age, and deaf. She couldn't speak to us, but she gestured for us to follow. She took us to a house in the Alfama, fed us, hid us for 3 weeks while papers were arranged. An American came, a pilot, very young, very serious. He brought documents, money for the ship passage. We sailed to New York in August 1947. I never learned the Portuguese woman's name. I never got to thank her. But I'm alive because of her. My children are alive because of her. My grandchildren. She saved us all. Asterisk. I set down the testimony, my eyes wet. There were dozens more. Families saved, lives preserved, futures made possible because a deaf Portuguese girl and an American spy had decided that some rules were worth breaking. The second box contained photographs. I recognized some, Papa in uniform, grandmother on her balcony. But there were others, Papa with groups of refugees at the docks, grandmother surrounded by children in some safe house, the two of them together at what must have been their wedding, both looking young and scared and hopeful. And one photograph that made my breath catch, grandmother holding a baby. I turned it over. On the back, in faded ink, * Maria Ooze with Rosa, June 1947. *. Who was Rosa? The third box contained Dr. Martins's research notes and a sealed envelope with my name on it. I opened the envelope. Dear Mr. Silva, by the time you read this, I will be gone. I hope you'll forgive an old woman's presumption in collecting these materials and insisting they be given to you. But I believe strongly that we have obligations to the past, not to judge it, but to understand it, to honor the complexity of what people endured and chose. Your grandparents saved my family. Without them, I would not exist. I've spent my life documenting stories like mine, ensuring that the people who showed courage in dark times are remembered. But I also believe in complete truth, even when it complicates the narrative we want to tell. Your grandfather eliminated Antonio Silva to protect the refugee network. This is true. Antonio was an informer whose betrayal led to arrests and deaths. This is also true. What you may not know is that your grandmother was pregnant when Antonio died. She was 17 weeks along. The stress of her uncle's death, combined with her own suspicions about how he'd really died, caused her to miscarry. She lost the baby girl she'd been carrying. This happened in late March 1947. Your grandmother never conceived again. I don't tell you this to add to your family's pain, but because you deserve to know the full cost of the choices that were made. Your grandfather saved many lives, including mine. But that salvation came at a price, not just Antonio's death, but your grandmother's child, and the other children she never got to have. She knew. I'm certain of this. A woman knows when her husband carries guilt that specific, that consuming. And she chose to stay with him anyway, chose to build a life, chose to paint beauty instead of rage. That is forgiveness at its most profound. Your mother was born 2 years later, after your grandparents had settled in Texas. She was not the child your grandmother lost, but she was loved fiercely. And you, too, are part of this legacy, the continuation of a story that could have ended in tragedy, but instead became something more. There is one more thing. In my research, I found records of the child your grandmother lost. She had named her, even at 17 weeks. The name was inscribed in a prayer book I found among your grandmother's effects, donated to a Lisbon church after she left Portugal. The name was Rosa. Rose. Light and beauty. I hope this knowledge brings you peace, not pain. I hope you understand that your grandparents were flawed, complicated people who did both harm and good, and that both truths can exist simultaneously. Thank you for carrying their story forward. Como os mejores cumprimentos, Drive. Helena Martins *. I sat in the conference room for a long time, the letter in my hands, tears running down my face. Rosa. The baby in the photograph wasn't some refugee child. It was the daughter grandmother had lost, held for a moment before everything fell apart. Papa hadn't just used grandmother to eliminate an informer. His actions had cost them their first child, the future they'd planned, a piece of their family that could never be recovered. And he'd carried that guilt for 40 years, drinking himself to oblivion while grandmother painted skies and tried to remember what hope looked like. But she'd stayed. She'd forgiven. She'd loved him despite everything. How? How does someone love through that much pain? I thought about all those paintings, all those luminous skies. I thought they were about Portugal, about freedom, about refugees escaping toward better lives. But maybe they were also about Rosa, about the light that exists even in the darkest moments, about the beauty that persists despite loss. Maybe grandmother had been painting hope not just for the people her family saved, but for the child she lost, the future that could have been, the life she'd sacrificed for something she believed was more important. I gathered up the testimonies, the photographs, the letter. I put them carefully back in the boxes. Dr. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway. "Are you all right?" "No," I said honestly. "But I will be." "What will you do with the materials?" "Take them home. Add them to what I already have. Make sure the story is complete. And then I'll do what grandmother did. I'll find a way to turn pain into something beautiful. I'll write it all down, the heroism and the betrayal, the lives saved and the lives lost, the impossible choices and the stubborn love that survived them." I looked at him. People need to know it's possible. To be both broken and whole. To do terrible things for good reasons and still deserve forgiveness. He nodded. Dr. Martins would have liked that. Chapter 25. I spent 3 days in Lisbon, walking the streets my grandparents had walked, visiting the places Papa had mentioned in his journal. I found the cafe where he'd met with Tom Coleman. It was still there, still serving coffee and pastries, the tile work on the walls unchanged from Papa's photographs. I found the church in the Alfama where grandmother and Papa had married. A priest let me look at the registry. There were their names, John Michael Silva and Maria Luz Mendez, December 8, 1947. 2 witnesses I didn't recognize. No family present. I found the house where grandmother had lived with her aunt. It had been renovated, turned into a boutique hotel, but the balcony was still there. The balcony where she'd hung laundry and sung fado and caught the attention of a young American pilot who would change her life forever. And I went to Cabo da Roca, the westernmost point of continental Europe, where the land ends and the Atlantic begins. That's where I am now, standing on this cliff with Papa's journal in my hands, finally understanding what it all means. The sky overhead is magnificent, exactly like grandmother's paintings. Layers of gray and gold and blue, light breaking through clouds in shafts that look almost divine. The kind of sky that makes you believe in something bigger than yourself, something worth sacrificing for, something worth forgiving. I opened the journal to the last page, the blank space after Papa's final entry. I take out a pen. And I write, March 15, 2015 Papa, I'm standing where you stood 68 years ago, looking at the sky you and grandmother both loved. I've read your confession. I've learned about Rosa. I've seen the testimonies of the people you saved and the documentation of the pain you caused. I understand now why you couldn't tell me everything. Some truths are too heavy for a child to carry. Some truths are too heavy for anyone to carry. But I'm carrying them now. And I want you to know, I forgive you. Not because what you did was right, I'm not sure it was. Not because the math worked out, you saved many by destroying few, but that doesn't erase the cost. I forgive you because you were human, because you did the best you could in an impossible situation, because you spent 40 years trying to atone for choices you could never take back. I forgive you because grandmother forgave you, and her forgiveness was hard-earned and more meaningful than mine could ever be. I forgive you because holding on to judgment serves no one. The past is fixed. The only thing I can change is how I carry it forward. I hope you and grandmother are together now, wherever that is. I hope Rosa is with you. I hope you found the peace you couldn't find in life. I'll tell your story. I'll tell all of it, the courage and the betrayal, the lives saved and the lives lost, the love that survived what should have destroyed it. I'll tell it honestly, without flinching, because that's what you deserve. What grandmother deserves. What Rosa deserves. And I'll try to live the way you taught me, choosing right over easy, even when it costs everything, and then finding a way to live with the consequences. Thank you for trusting me with the truth. Thank you for teaching me that people are more than their worst moments. Thank you for showing me that forgiveness is possible even when it seems impossible. I love you. I always will. Your grandson, Michael. I close the journal. The wind carries the smell of salt and rosemary. Below, waves crash against black rocks. Above, the sky shifts and changes, light moving through clouds like a promise. I stand there for a long time, just breathing, just being, just existing in this moment where past and present and future all converge. Then I turn and walk back toward the parking lot, toward the rental car that will take me back to Lisbon, toward the plane that will carry me home to California, toward the life I'm building from the pieces of the life my family lived. I'm carrying their story now, the weight of it, the beauty of it, the impossible, complicated truth of it. And I'll carry it well. I promise. Epilogue. The book is published 2 years later. It's called The Skies Over Portugal, A Family History of War, Resistance, and Forgiveness. It tells everything: Papa's intelligence work, grandmother's courage, Antonio's betrayal and death, Rose's loss, the refugee testimonies, the decades of guilt and art and love that followed. I use their real names. They're gone now. They can't be hurt by the truth. And the truth, I've learned, is the only gift I can give them. The book does well. Better than well. It wins awards, gets reviewed in major publications, becomes required reading in several universities. People write to me, descendants of refugees my grandparents helped, historians studying the Portuguese resistance, readers who just need to know that forgiveness is possible after betrayal. One letter stands out. It's from a woman in Brazil, 92 years old, her handwriting shaky but clear. Asterisk, dear Mr. Silva, asterisk. Asterisk, I am Sarah Goldstein, though I go by Sarah Costa now. You published my testimony in your book, The Story of How Your Grandmother Saved My Family in 1947. Asterisk. Asterisk, I wanted to write to tell you something I didn't include in that testimony, because I didn't understand its significance until I read your book. Asterisk. Asterisk, the day we left Lisbon, your grandmother came to the dock to see us off. She was pale, moving carefully, and I remember thinking she looked ill. My mother asked if she was all right. She signed something. I didn't understand Portuguese sign language, but my mother had learned a little during our week's hiding. She said your grandmother had told her, I lost something precious, but you are alive. That has to be enough. Asterisk. Asterisk, I didn't know what she meant. Now I do. Asterisk. Asterisk, I wanted you to know that your grandmother saw us off, saw the family she'd risked everything to save, and believed, at least in that moment, that it was worth it. That our lives were worth Rose's loss. Worth the pain. Asterisk. Asterisk, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if any life can be measured against another like that. But I do know that I lived 80 years because of her. I've had children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I've loved and been loved. I've created beauty and tried to do good. Asterisk. Asterisk, that's what your grandmother gave us. Not just survival, but the chance to live fully, to love deeply, to pass something precious forward. Asterisk. Asterisk, I hope that gives you some comfort. Asterisk. Asterisk, with gratitude and sorrow, asterisk, asterisk, Sarah, asterisk. I frame the letter and hang it in my office, next to grandmother's painting, that luminous sky, gold breaking through gray. Sometimes students come to my office hours and ask about it. What does it mean? They ask, looking at the sky, the light, the colors that seem to shift depending on how you look at them. It means hope is possible even in darkness, I tell them. It means beauty can survive pain. It means people are more complicated than we want them to be, and that's okay. It means forgiveness is a choice we make every day, not a destination we reach. But what does it really mean? They press. To you. Personally. I look at the painting, at the sky grandmother painted over and over, trying to remember, trying to forgive, trying to create something beautiful from something broken. It means my grandmother loved my grandfather, I say. Despite everything. Because of everything. She loved him, and she painted these skies to remind herself why that love was worth it. Why all of it was worth it. And was it? They ask. Worth it? I think about Papa's guilt, about grandmother's paintings, about Rosa who never got to live, about the hundreds of refugees who did. I think about choices and consequences and the impossible math of morality. I don't know, I say honestly. But they believed it was. And that belief kept them going, kept them loving, kept them human. Maybe that's enough. The students nod and leave, and I sit alone in my office with the painting and the letter and the weight of a story that's both mine and not mine, that belongs to my family and to history and to anyone who's ever had to choose between bad and worse and then live with the consequences. Outside my window, The California sky is clear and blue and endless. It's beautiful. It's just a sky. But it's also everything. Asterisk, asterisk, the end, asterisk, asterisk.